From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. It's great to be back in the studio after a quick kind of jump to the Big Apple, and being back here in the studio is always great. I love being in the studio. You know why? Because there's one thing I enjoy more than anything else, and that's a good espresso, which is really, really hard to find when you're traveling. Or hard to find in time for a show. A lot of people ask me when they hear I'm a full-time CISO and I do the show, they go, how do you do both? And I go, it's rough. It's hard. There's a toll to it. Preparing for a 20-minute show like this one takes about an hour and 15, an hour and a half. And then the post is another probably 30 to 45 minutes. So all in all, that's just producing the content. That's not promoting. That's not posting. All the other stuff, which, I'm getting help here and there, but primarily the show is driven without any sort of kind of like monetary ambitions per se, because we want to keep our content honest. So it's mostly supported by users who go and subscribe to our cyberhubpodcast.com and support us that way. If we do bring on sponsors, it's typically people who we really, really want to have on, nothing else. So without further ado, we got a packed show for all y'all today. There was enough today to not talk about Patch Tuesday at all. But Patch Tuesday is so significant today that I couldn't ignore it. And so cyber happens in the context. Let's get into that. Before we do, I've got my double espresso this morning. Look at that. Look at that beautiful ring of foam right there. That ring of foam, that's what makes an espresso. If you get an espresso and it doesn't have a rich, thick foam on top, it means the machine hasn't been cleaned, coffee's not right, and that's not an espresso. It's just black coffee disguised as an espresso, and you were better off going to like QT and getting a coffee for $1. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. Oh, it's so good. All right, let's get into the morning show. Here we go, folks. Patch Tuesday kicked off 134 flaws in Microsoft's ecosystem with one actively exploited ZeroDay. We're going to get into that ZeroDay in just a moment. First, let's cover these Patch Tuesday fixes. They're categorized by the type of vulnerability they are, 49 of which are an elevation of privilege vulnerabilities, 31 are remote code execution, 17 are information disclosure, 14 denial of service vulnerability, 9 security feature bypasses, and 3 spoofing vulnerabilities, and a partridge in a pear tree. The above numbers don't even include Mariner flaws and 13 Microsoft Edge vulnerabilities that were also fixed. We're going to get into this Microsoft ZeroDay because it's significant. Microsoft is saying the ransom EXX ransomware gang is exploiting the high severity ZeroDay flaw in the Windows common log file system to gain system privileges on victim systems. This vulnerability has already been assigned a CVE 2025-29824. It was patched yesterday with the Patch Tuesday release, and it's only been exploited in a limited number of attacks. The CVE is due to a use after free weakness that lets local attackers with low privilege gain system privileges and low complexity attacks that don't really require user interaction. While the company has issued security updates for some of these window versions, it's delayed releasing patches for the Windows 10 x64 and 32-bit systems, saying they would be released as soon as possible. Likely there was an issue there. The targets of said attack include organizations in IT and real estate sectors in the US, the financial sector in Venezuela, a Spanish software company, and the retail sector in Saudi Arabia. So this is showing kind of a distributed type of attack chain. So this isn't necessarily state-sponsored type of stuff. It's likely cyber crime where they're trying to take advantage of what they're able to take advantage of using this specific ZeroDay. Customers that are running Windows 11 version 24 H2 are not affected by the observed exploitation, even if the vulnerability is present. Microsoft is urging everyone to apply these as soon as possible. Obviously, ransom EXX, there's the ransom note there. ESET reported last month that Pipe Magic's also been used to deploy exploits targeting a Windows Win 32 kernel subsystem ZeroDay that was CVE 2025-249-83 since March of 2023. So this ZeroDay is significant, which gets CISA to immediately add it to its KEF catalog, as well as the GladiNet center stack vulnerability. That's another ZeroDay. So we'll start with, we've already covered the Windows one, so let's get into the GladiNet center stack one. That's CVE 2025-30406. It's got a CVSS score of a 9er. The center stack bug was disclosed on April 3rd when Gladianet announced a patch for it, warning that it's been exploited in the wild since at least March. There's no public information on those attacks as of yet. The issue impacts the way the cloud server and collaboration platform manage cryptographic keys used for view state integrity verification, which would allow an attacker to forge data and execute arbitrary code remotely. The application uses a hard-coded or improperly protected machine key in the IIS web config file, which was responsible for securing the ASP.NET view state data. If the attacker obtains or predicts the machine key, they can forge view state payloads that pass integrity checks. So all in all, you have that. The vulnerability was addressed with CenterStack 16.4.103.15.563.68 with an urgent update. And obviously, the log file has also been added to CISO's catalog. And you have until April 29th to get those taken care of. Continuing with Patch Tuesday, our friends over at Adobe released their massive batch of security updates, including a multiple critical severity vulnerabilities that could be exploited remotely to take control of computer systems. All in all, 54 documented bugs and flaws were addressed, including a major code execution defect in Adobe Cold Fusion, Adobe FrameMaker, Adobe Photoshop, and Adobe Commerce. The company is calling urgent attention to Cold Fusion, which is the web development platform, warning of at least 15 documented vulnerabilities that put organizations at risk to arbitrary file system read, arbitrary code execution, and even security feature bypass. They've given the rank of the CVSS from 7.5 to 9.1. So it just kind of shows you the difference there, but they're all significant. When typically, just to kind of give you an idea, because we looked this up, right? So we went and we kind of looked at how often are like multiple CVEs within that range rare, like it's 1 in like 10,000, something along those lines. It's crazy. Like Perplexity was giving us an answer there. I should have put it up there. All right. Either way, the bugs have an improper input validation, deserialization of untrusted data, and authentication weakness that would lead to arbitrary code execution. Meaning, if all in all, someone's able to take advantage of all of these various vulnerabilities in Cold Fusion, you're having a really, really bad day. So you want to make sure you prioritize this patch along with so many others you have on your plate today. The patches also provide cover for 5 documented security holes in Adobe Commerce, with a note from Adobe that these bugs expose user to privilege escalation, denial of service, and even security bypass attacks. The Cold Fusion and Commerce software products are oft targeted by malicious hacker, including nation-state groups, so you want to prioritize those over the others. Ivanti, VMware, and Zoom all announced fixes for dozens of vulnerabilities across their products. Ivanti updating 6 vulnerabilities in their endpoint manager, including a high-severity defect, CVE 2025-22466, that would allow an unauthenticated attacker to perform cross-site scripting attacks to obtain admin privileges. The 2 other high-severity bugs addressed are CVE 2025-22458, a DLL hijacking issue that could lead to privilege escalation, and CVE 2025-22461, an SQL injection that could lead to code execution. Ivanti says there's no evidence of being exploited in the wild, but since I've spoken about Ivanti 3 days in a row, I'd be remiss if I didn't urge you to just rip it out, put it in the garbage, go get a Sonic wall until you can get something better. Seriously, it's not a bad idea. 47 vulnerabilities were addressed in the VMware Tanzu Cloud native application platform, including 29 issues in the Green Plum backup and restore, and 18 bugs in various components of the VMware Tanzu Green Plum. All 47 CVEs, some of which were assigned roughly 3 years ago, impact various dependencies used within the affected applications. 10 of the patched vulnerabilities are rated as critical. Zoom patching 3 security advisories addressing 6 defects in workplace application across Windows, Linux, Mac OS, iOS, and Android, and those are not significant. And then obviously Google updating Chrome, so you want to make sure you get that done. Fortinet announcing that they patched 10 different vulnerabilities across their products, including a critical severity bug in FortiSwitch that's CVE 2024-48887. It's got a CVSS score of 9.3. The FortiSwitch issue could allow an attacker to modify admin passwords, the company's warning. The unverified password change vulnerability in FortiSwitch GUI would allow a remote unauthenticated attacker to modify admin passwords via a specially crafted request, essentially locking you out. The bug impacts FortiSwitch versions 6.4 to 7.6, and it was addressed with the release of 6.4.15, 7.0.11, 7.2.9, 7.4.5, and 7.6.1 Patches were also released for CVEs 2024-26013 and 50565, which are high severity vulnerabilities that would allow an unauthenticated attacker to perform a man-in-the-middle attack, intercept FGFM authentication requests between management and managed devices, and even impersonate the management device altogether. So you want to make sure you get your 40 stuff patched up. On the OT and ICS side, we have Siemens with 9 new advisories. One advisory urging customers to replace the Centron 7KT PAC 1260 data manager with the newer PAC 1261. The former is affected by critical vulnerabilities that can allow an attacker to access files and execute arbitrary code, and it will not receive any patches. A critical flaw was also found in Industrial Edge. That product is affected by a weak authentication issue that would facilitate an unauthenticated remote attacker to circumvent authentication and impersonate a legitimate user. Siemens also notifying customers about the recently disclosed Ingress Nightmare vulnerability affecting its Insights Hub private cloud solution. So Schneider Electric publishing only 2 advisories. One describes 2 high-severity vulnerabilities in the Conixium Network Manager, including one that can allow remote code execution and denial of service attacks on engineering workstation. The second covers 3 medium severity flaws in the Trio Q licensed data radio. Rockwell, for their end, publishing 1 advisory, is informing customers about a nearly dozen local code execution vulnerabilities that affect their arena products. Exploitation involves tricking the targeted users into opening malicious files, so not as easy. ABB, for their end, publishing 2 advisories that describe dozens of vulnerabilities in the past year, and third-party components used by the Arctic Wireless Gateway. Wow, that's our Patch Tuesday. 13 minutes in. Let that sink. Let that sink in with how much stuff is inherently flawed at the code level that requires constant updates. And once a month, we're bombarded with it. I'll tell you this. Primary thing I will say as a practitioner, and I say this every Patch Tuesday on the show, be remiss if I missed it this time. You prioritize your patches based on your business risk. And I know that seems common sense. But there's battles that you can park, and there are battles you got to take on. So I always say my security products and my ERP, my enterprise-wide systems take top priority because they're a larger attack surface. And then everything from there kind of goes into that exposure management side, right? And so that's how you want to manage this is almost like a funnel, right? You gotta want to funnel. There's a lot right now. You're looking at it. You're going, how do I take it in? And there's a lot of tools out there to help you do this. So you're not kind of trying to do it on your own, but you really do want to map your exposure surface to your business processes, to critical business functions. And then you want to prioritize that way. And that'll typically help you address a slew of challenges. And I mean, I didn't address all of them, by the way. I just picked the big ones. There's probably 6 or 7 other stories around Patch Tuesday we can talk about today. Literally. But there are other news. We're going to get to that. Let's get into the Treasury. So the Treasury breach that happened where in June of 2023, they gained access to over 150,000 emails, according to an anonymous source. The OCC, an independent bureau of the U.S. Treasury that oversees banks and Federal Savings Association and ensures they comply with applicable laws and regulation, treat customer fairly, and provide fair access to financial services. Bloomberg is now reporting that the threat actors gained the ability to monitor employee emails after breaking into an email system admin account, according to an OCC disclosure in February of this year. At the time, it reported the attack to CISO as a cybersecurity incident involving its email system and multiple email accounts with no impact to the financial sector. The OCC identified, isolated, and resolved the security incidents involving the admin account in the OCC system, according to the regulator. Yesterday, on Tuesday, April 8th, the banking regulator notified Congress of a major information security incident discovered on February 11th. The regulator said the system admin account compromised in the breach was disabled 1 day later on February 12th. But all in all, they were in the system since June. So about 6 months, 7 months. In early January, the Treasury also disclosed that its network was breached using the Beyond Trust remote SaaS API key to compromise an instant used by the agency. So you're obviously seeing a lot of attack. A lot of these attacks, by the way, are attributed to China, which we're in the middle of a trade war with. But I mean, this is peaking at scale, with cyber being the 7th defensive. And so it'd be good to get some direction from the administration in terms of what's going to happen with NSA and Cyber Command. Are you splitting the roles? And if you are, just say it. And if you're not, just let us know you're hiring someone else for the role, right? Like, it'd be good to get direction. Be nice. Just something to say there. A Russian nation-state threat actor is exploiting a lesser-known feature of the Microsoft Windows Remote Desktop Protocol, targeting European organizations for espionage. The Google Threat Intelligence Group said a Russian nation-state actor tracks as UNC 5837 was observed using the feature for reading victim drives, even stealing files and capturing clipboard data. But these RDP attacks are focused on interactive session rather than what they traditionally do, which is taken over device. The campaign is creatively leveraged resource redirection. Evidence has shown that this campaign may have involved the use of an RDP proxy tool like PyRDP to automate malicious activities. The campaign used two lesser-known RDP features, using RDP for deploying a malicious application and for accessing data from victims. The attackers mainly targeted European government and military organizations. The attack began with the attacker sending victims phishing emails and projects related to Amazon, Microsoft, the Ukrainian State Secure Communication and Information Security Agency. All were part of that. The email included a signed RDP file attachment purporting to be an application relevant to the described project. And again, why are you allowing RDP to get through your email filters? Mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. Europeans, there you have it. There's that. The CERT into Ukraine is revealing a new set of attacks targeting Ukrainian institutions with information stealing malware. Now, James, why are you talking about Ukrainian target attacks? Because they typically escalate to us later. Ukraine is a petri dish. You put it under a microscope, you test a whole bunch of theories, and then from there, you develop the tools that you need to do actual effective reporting. This is the case here. So, the activity is aimed at military formations, law enforcement agencies, and even local self-government bodies, including particularly those near the Ukrainian's eastern border with Russia. The attacks involve distribution of phishing emails containing a macro-enabled Excel, which, when opened, facilitates the deployment of two pieces of malware, a PowerShell script taken from the PSSW 100 AVP, and a GitHub repository that opens a reverse shell, and a previously undocumented stealer called Gifted Crook. File names and email subjects lines are referenced relevant to sensitive issues like the demining, administrative fee, UAV production, compensation for destroyed property. The spreadsheets contain malicious code, which, upon opening the document and enabling macros, automatically transforms into malware and executes without even the user knowing. So, I mean, again, and we go back to the RDP protocols that we just talked about a second ago. They're using those protocols as part of this greater attack. So we understand how they're using RDP. We now understand how they're getting it. They're using phishing. They're going after legitimate targets. And by the way, the one thing about the Russians that you can't say in the way they target the Ukraine, to understand the Ukrainian mindset. So they have really, really high phishing success ratios because they're hitting the Ukrainians in areas they know they care about, with subject lines and topics and specially crafted emails that do just that. So ask yourself a question. Can an attacker do that to your business? And if so, how do you build a way to defend against it? That's really, really significant. And finally, something the NCSC in the UK is sharing technical details of spyware targeting Uyghurs, Tibetan, and Taiwanese groups from the Chinese. You know who's not a part of this? The folks over at the University of Toronto, Citizens Lab. They only care about spyware from one place specifically, it appears, while ignoring all other spywares. So the UK National Cybersecurity Center and the International Cybersecurity and Intelligence Agencies are saying attackers from China are deploying two forms of previously identified spyware to snoop on Uyghurs, Tibetan, and Taiwanese individuals, as well as civil society organizations. Those softwares are Moonshine and Bad Bazaar. They break into device microphones and cameras to harvest messages, photos, and location data and allow users to be monitored in real time without their knowledge. The spyware-infected apps are used to target individuals and organizations worldwide who are listed, who are considered by the Chinese state to pose a threat to its stability. Some of the apps mimic popular platforms like WhatsApp and Skype, while others have been set up as standalone platforms to attract interest from potential victims in their targeted communities. Again, the whole idea here is that they understand the mindset of their adversaries. They're building this to essentially be able to streamline trust. They're building it based on trust. So Tibet 1 and an audio version of the Quran are kind of what they're targeting in Tibet. And obviously the audio Quran app uses Moonshine spyware to target Uyghurs, according to the NCSC. Again, Interesting how Citizens Lab is noticeably absent from China. I don't know. Maybe there's an interest between Citizens Lab and China to only target spyware used by governments? Or is it okay when a communist party uses spyware on dissidents, but it's not okay when governments buy spyware to use for government purposes because they're legitimate governments or illegitimate governments, whether you like them or not? They're the elected or non-elected government of said area. And that's not okay because they bought their spyware from Israel. Is that a thing, Citizens Lab? I don't know. I'm going to call out your hypocrisy today. Haven't seen you really care about Uyghurs. Seen you really care about journalists and people that and governments that buy Israeli spyware. Haven't seen you really call out China or Russia for their spyware game. Maybe because you're cowards, or maybe because you're hypocrites, or otherwise. Either way, I take Citizens Lab at the same pace I take Avanti. Rip it out. It doesn't have any sort of usefulness at all anymore. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest news. Until then, have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.